Suella Braverman overplayed her hand too quickly, and she's not got a chance of being leader. And if she hasn't got a chance of being leader, and she's not going to get behind somebody else, then I think it looks like her time in the Conservative Party. She has few friends in the Conservative Party now, and that she could defect in quite a high-profile manner to Reform UK. And as sources of Reform UK have said, she'd be very welcome in their party.
Now, earlier today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with our Prime Minister, urging Keir Starmer to show leadership by helping to remove restrictions on Ukraine's use of weapons supplied by the West. Zelensky made the remarks while addressing the cabinet in Downing Street, where he also thanked Starmer for the UK's continued support of his country. We can speak now to Times Radio's political commentator, Theo Usherwood, about this and all the other stories dominating the day's politics. Evening, Theo.
Very good evening to you.
Let's start with that meeting between our Prime Minister and the Ukrainian leader and what's being described as a historic address of Keir Starmer's cabinet.
Yes, it's the first time a foreign leader has addressed the cabinet, a UK cabinet, since Bill Clinton, who was, of course, US president back in 1997. So that's more than 25 years ago. And it was a significant moment when he was applauded by Keir Starmer and his top team. But behind, of course, the optics of it, the photos and the videos of Mr. Zelensky in that cabinet room, there was a serious message from the Ukrainian president along the lines that he wants Keir Starmer to show continued leadership, particularly around permission to use UK weapons much deeper into Russian territory. Now, it is possible Zelensky does have permission to use UK weapons that we supply and other European nations supply to cross the battle lines into nearby Russian targets. But given that Russia has immense military capabilities, Zelensky wants permission to go much deeper and target particularly Russian airfields as he seeks to try and wrest back some control and stave off advances by Vladimir Putin's military forces.
From a domestic perspective, Theo, what can we take from Starmer's decision to have Zelensky as the first foreign leader to visit the UK cabinet since Clinton? What's the significance of that?
Well, I think Keir Starmer wants to show that he's foursquare behind Ukraine's president. Of course, he was accused by the Conservatives of not necessarily showing, this was during the election campaign, and I'm sure we'll hear more of this from Rishi Sunak and whoever takes over, but not necessarily showing Zelensky the same support as the Conservative government, because whilst the UK now has promised to increase under Labour defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, it's only when resources allow. Rishi Sunak actually had a target of increasing that military spending by 2030, and the argument from the Tories was that actually Starmer was, to use another word, to paraphrase, was softer in his support for Ukraine, and Sunak made those similar comments along those lines when he was at the G7 summit in June, because Starmer was not agreeing to meet that target, that time frame of increasing defence spending. So I think Starmer wants to show Zelensky that whatever the politics and whatever the comments made by his predecessor in number 10, Rishi Sunak, he's very much, and his government is very much aligned with supporting Ukraine, especially at a time when I think looking ahead to what's going over in America, and the possibility that President Trump might win the White House, and then the distinct possibility, especially given the remarks made by J.D. Vance, his pick for vice president, that Ukraine was not necessarily a matter of concern for the United States. But as far as Keir Starmer is concerned, it is a matter for the UK. It is, and Zelensky will have our support and will have Europe's support in the future.
Keen to get your thoughts on some of the other big stories that we're hearing about. We're seeing reports, Theo, this evening that Suella Braverman is expected to defect to Reform UK. Is this likely to happen? What are we hearing from Suella on this?
So we're hearing from both sides, sources on both sides within the Conservative Party and Reform UK, that it's likely that Suella will defect to reform from the Conservatives, probably in the autumn, and I would imagine it would happen around conference time. Reform UK have 5 MPs in the House of Commons, and it's likely that Suella will become the 6th MP if she were and when she were to defect to Nigel Farage's party. Now, she was thinking of, and she may still, and it's understood she may still go ahead with it, but launching a bid to be Conservative leader. But the field on the right of the party, when you consider that Kemi Badenoch is going to go for it, Robert Jenrick has made an appeal, a very obvious appeal to, right-wing Conservative MPs, that it's quite a crowded field. And so Suella Braverman found herself in this situation where she was making more and more right-wing statements. She made those comments. She went across to America, made some fairly appalling comments, homophobic comments during a speech there. And she seems to have lost her own allies and support base amongst Conservative MPs in the House of Commons. John Hayes, who is a big supporter of hers, isn't going to be getting involved in her bid to be leader. There are others who feel that she is not, she went too soon, just as the Conservative Party was dusting itself down after a very heavy election defeat. She hadn't, rather than respecting that and actually giving it a bit of time, she came straight out of the blocks. And I think there's a feeling that actually Suella Braverman overplayed her hand too quickly, and she's not got a chance of being leader. And if she hasn't got a chance of being leader, and she's not going to get behind somebody else, then I think it looks like her time in the Conservative Party, she has few friends in the Conservative Party now, and that she could defect in quite a high-profile manner to Reform UK. And as sources of Reform UK have said, she'd be very welcome in their party.
We haven't got a huge amount of time left, Theo, but I'm keen to just hear your thoughts on the announcement we've heard from Rishi Sunak on his appointments in his interim opposition today. Any surprises there?
No, I think perhaps the most instructive thing about these appointments to front bench roles in Rishi Sunak's announcements today is that actually it's very it sheds a real light on just how far the Conservative Party have fallen. They may not have fallen as far as some polls were predicting, but now it's the case that 4 in 10 Tory MPs hold shadow front bench roles. You've got some promotions. People like Danny Kruger from the right of the party has gone up to shadow defence. I think that's notable. Alicia Kearns, who chaired the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, she's now a shadow foreign minister. But then you've got people like Paul Holmes, who's now got 3 jobs as an assistant whip, shadows foreign affairs, and he also shadows the Northern Ireland brief. Andrew Bowie has the shadow. He's the shadow minister for energy and net zero, and he's the shadow veterans minister. And given the paucity of numbers on the Conservative benches, you're going to see stretched Conservative MPs given more than 1, 2 or 3 briefs appearing at potentially multiple occasions during the same day, same week for those different briefs in the House of Commons. And I think it's going to be hard for Tory MPs and the Tory opposition when it gets going under new leadership to really hold this government to account on the very basis that they just don't have the bandwidth, and the numbers on their benches to give Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, and the cabinet members a real run for their money in the House of Commons, whether it's asking departmental questions or responding to statements and urgent questions.
It's a very serious plate spinning going on. Listen, we'll have to leave it there. But Theo, a pleasure speaking to you. Theo Usherwood, Times Radio's political commentator, joining us with a roundup of the big political stories of the day.